Hello, I'm Vicki Bond, the Interpreter Outreach and Development Coordinator for the Arizona Commission for the Deaf and the Hard of Hearing, ACDHH. In this video, I will be talking about a program called ERIC. ERIC stands for Emergency Response Interpreter Credential Program. ERIC was established through a partnership with ACDHH and the Arizona Department of Emergency and Military Affairs, or DEMA, the Maricopa County Department of Emergency Management, or MCDEM, and the Arizona Department of Forestry and Fire Management, or DFFM. These agencies recognized that there was no accessibility being provided for deaf and hard of hearing individuals during emergencies and disasters, including captioning and interpreters. Representatives from these agencies discussed how to establish a program that would both train interpreters and CART providers, as well as create an easy call-out system similar to what is currently being used to call out firefighters and other emergency response personnel during critical situations. From these discussions, ERIC was created with the goal of providing accessibility for deaf and hard of hearing individuals during any emergency or disaster situation. Many individuals are curious about who can be involved in the ERIC program. ERIC is open to interpreters who are nationally certified and hold a state of Arizona interpreting license, whether they are deaf or hearing, as well as CART providers who have a national level certification. Interpreters and CART providers who want to be involved in ERIC must first pass a screening. During that screening, we check to ensure their credentials are up to date and that they can handle working in stressful environments for very long hours. We also check their availability and willingness to stay in shelters or fire camps, for example. They may need to camp overnight, and we make sure that they're comfortable with that. They will also need to get replacements for any work that they may have. For example, freelance interpreters may need to find substitutes for their jobs, and full-time employees may need to request permission from their boss to be off for up to a week at a time. And they need to be able to get all of these things in place, in addition to making sure they have a plan to care for their family, pets, and children if they are called out to an emergency at the last minute. Interpreters and CART providers must participate in a 3-day training. During that training, they learn about emergency response information, terminology, and systems, as well as participate in trainings required to pass 3 specific tests that are required to receive a red card. A red card is required for interpreters and CART providers to participate in fire camps as well as certain other emergency situations. That red card allows interpreters and CART providers to work in fire camp, and without that red card, they're not eligible to do so. From time to time, people will ask why they're not able to simply select an interpreter that they like or prefer. If that interpreter does not have a red card, they are not eligible to interpret in emergency situations. They must have completed their training, passed their tests, and received that red card. There are currently 11 interpreters and 3 CART providers who have completed the training and passed the required tests to receive their red cards. They are eligible to work in those emergency situations. Very soon, we are hoping to provide an additional training for more interpreters and CART providers. If you're interested in being involved in the ERIC program, please keep an eye out for an announcement about that new training group coming out sometime in the fall. You may be wondering what interpreters and CART providers do when they're called to work in emergency situations. If they're called to work in a fire camp, for example, they will work very closely with the Public Information Officers team, or the PIO team. They'll work with those individuals to ensure that community meetings have both interpreters and CART providers, and that any videos that are recorded for posting on social media or websites have both interpretation and captioning as well. It's important that all of public information be fully accessible for the deaf and hard of hearing. You may notice that certain situations may not have an interpreter or a CART provider, and you may be wondering why that is. ERIC is a very new program. We're still working on educating emergency response teams and organizations that interpreters and captioners are available and ready to go, so some of them are not yet aware of the program. We are trying to educate them that it's important they call for interpreters and CART providers in order to ensure accessibility for the deaf and hard of hearing communities. We also only have 11 interpreters and 3 CART providers, which means we have very limited resources. It is difficult at this time to ensure there is personnel available for every emergency that needs them, and frankly right now we just don't have enough providers. That's why we're offering another training in the fall, so that hopefully we'll be able to provide a CART provider and an interpreter for every situation that needs one. In the meantime, it's a work in progress. Any emergency managers or emergency responders are able to request an ERIC interpreter or CART provider. Requests can be made by contacting me, my email will appear at the end of the video, or by submitting an RO or a resource order through the Arizona Integrated Dispatch Center or ADC. They will be able to handle calling, resources, and placing interpreters and captioners in emergency situations. Any emergency team or organization who is releasing public information should provide accessibility for that information. Whether it be videos on social media or public meetings, accessibility needs to be provided, which means having an interpreter and having captioning. If you're planning to make public announcements, host a public meeting, or post videos on websites or social media, please consider requesting an interpreter and a CART provider. If you'd like more information about the ERIC program, please contact me. Whether you work for another state and you'd like to establish a similar program and you'd like more detailed information, or you're an emergency manager and you would like to request resources, or you're an interpreter or CART provider and you'd like to be involved in the program, I would be happy to help. Please feel free to contact me. My email is v.bond@acdhh.az.gov. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video.